Welcome, everyone. We are here at BlackHat 2019 in lovely Las Vegas and doing a series of interviews with folks from the industry. I'm very excited to welcome Krupa Srivatsan. She's the director of security product marketing, even at Infoblox.
That's right.
Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes, nice to have you. So for our audience, I know I've visited the Infoblox booth several times and tried to get a feel for what you do.
Yep.
But for our audience, I really want to hear your take on what problem you solve for Infoblox.
Sure, absolutely. So I think we all are living in the age of digital transformation, right? So it's no longer about traditional networks, workloads residing in the data center. It's changing fast and it's changing rapidly, right? Customers and organizations are moving to the cloud. They're deploying applications in the cloud. They're doing SD-WAN for their branch offices. They are doing hybrid cloud. They're doing IoT deployments, things like that. So one of the biggest challenges is how do you secure these new paradigm shifts, right? Your traditional security solutions are great for when things were within a perimeter firewall,
Sure,
things were
yeah.
within a data center. But that's no longer true, right? Because employees are accessing their company's applications from Starbucks, from home, right? They're always on the road. So how do you
All it takes is one developer to have one Amazon account, and you could have 300 different services in the cloud, right?
Exactly, exactly. All it takes is that one breach, that one compromise, and then your whole organization is exposed,
Yep.
right? One thing that people don't realize is there is one underlying foundational network infrastructure that all companies use, all organizations use for connectivity. And that infrastructure is DNS, DHCP, and IPAN, right? Domain name system, DHCP, and IP address management. You need that for connectivity, your email applications, your SaaS applications, everything, your whole internet connectivity depends on DNS.
And it's interesting, Krupa. In my history, I've been a sysadmin and a network admin, and I had studied DNS as part of my testing for certifications, and I really liked it. I configured it at home, and when I got to these organizations, even among technology people, they're like, "Oh yeah, the DNS thing is like in the corner and it's running." They're like, "Yeah, you really need to go clean that up." And like, I lift up the hood and I'm horrified,
Yeah.
and I do the project to clean it up and secure it.
Right.
Then I go to my next job, and it was like the same thing all over again, right?
Right.
They're like, "Oh, you've done DNS before, Paul. You're the DNS guy, right?"
Right.
So I learned a lot about DNS infrastructure and security. And you're right, it's
Right.
so pivotal to everything we do.
It's pivotal, and people don't think about it until something goes wrong.
Right.
Right. The other part of it is how can you leverage that to improve your security posture? Attackers know that it's open. DNS is left open in most organizations. Nobody's checking. Nobody is looking at the traffic that's going through the DNS protocol, port 53.
It's kind of a lost art. Like, I feel like there was lots of DNS scanning tools that tried to do zone transfers, and that's still valid today. And
Right.
some people miss that configuration. And
Exactly, exactly. And when you leverage DNS for security, you'll be amazed at how much percentage of malware actually leverages DNS to communicate to its command and control site, right? So if you put a security on top of your DNS infrastructure, you can look for things, you can detect and block things like ransomware, phishing, exploit kits, advanced threats, right? Advanced persistent threats, data exfiltration, DNS tunneling. I mean, the list goes on, right? All of that can be stopped using a DNS security solution.
Does
Right.
that mean I authenticate to the DNS server to do any kind of a lookup? Is that like one thing?
So let's say you have a compromised device, right? Let's say your laptop is compromised for whatever reason, right? There's some malware on it. One of the first things that malware does is do a DNS lookup to its CNC site on the internet. It does a DNS lookup. So if you have DNS security in there, it will detect that lookup and it will not resolve that DNS query. So usually the infected device is looking up its CNC server to download additional malicious software. So when you stop that in its tracks, it cannot proceed with its campaign.
Is that based on a blacklist or in
Great
some
question.
cases or behavior?
Great question. It's a combination of both.
Good. I'm
Right.
glad to hear that. Yeah, yeah. Because
So
blacklists are kind of by themselves. just
right,
right?
and
Yeah.
blacklists or threat feeds they're great. You need them, but they only tell you about the stuff that's already been flagged as bad. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
What if it's a new attack infrastructure that the bad actor has set up on the internet? A new
Right.
domain, a new URL, right?
But
That
even,
will,
I
it
mean,
might
it's,
not be in the threat feed.
right. But it's easy to go get a new domain, but a lot of threat feeds will, or threat analysts will look in and say, well, that domain's new, so I'm going to block it. However, what I've observed is that attackers are going out on the internet looking for what's vulnerable oh, that domain's been registered for 5 years. Well, I can just compromise that site and use it for command and control infrastructure.
Exactly, right? So you got to use a combination of threat intel and blacklists, but also do real-time analytics
Yep.
on these DNS queries. So when you do these real-time analytics on these queries, you can detect those zero-day threats that are going to destinations that may not be in any threat feeds, right?
I believe you because it does, when you look at it, it can be so anomalous if you apply the right analytics.
Yeah.
In other words, like I've never looked up a .mx domain in my entire history for the past year. And all of a sudden one day I do, and it's only one, right? I'm assuming that analytics are looking at things like that I would look at as an analyst, right?
Exactly. Things that you would look at an analyst, but it's an automated way to do that,
Yeah.
and in real time. So you're constantly checking for these anomalies. And when you do that, you can detect patterns of malicious activity. You can detect DNS tunneling or data exfiltration via DNS. You can detect DGAs. I'm not sure if you are familiar with DGAs, but it's domain generation algorithms, right?
Yeah.
So that are specific to the DNS protocol, or fast flux, which is the other side of the equation of DGA.
Right.
So those things are harder to detect using your traditional blacklist type methods. You need something that's more dynamic.
Right.
So those are some of the things you can do on the DNS layer. And so it's a great way to stop like 90% of the threats from spreading on your network once it's breached the perimeter.
I would imagine deployment's fairly easy. If we're just talking about lookups, deployment's probably pretty easy, right? Because DNS is pretty resilient. You can add stuff into the mix.
Absolutely.
Right? You can have more than one, and one of them is Infoblox, test it, and then
absolutely. And what you're hinting at, I think, is the scale. Right, so you need DNS servers. DNS servers are spread across the network to service the clients. So when you add security, you're now spreading that security kind of net across your entire infrastructure, and the amount of threat intel or the indicators of compromise that a DNS appliance can act upon is in the millions, right? So the scale is just almost like infinite scale, right? You can even say scaling to the size of the internet, right? So DNS is a great way to get that scalable, ubiquitous protection across your data centers, your headquarters, your remote offices, your SD-WAN branches, your cloud workloads, even your cloud workloads, your Amazon, AWS workloads, they all need DNS, right?
Right.
So it's so pervasive that you can spread that security and improve your security posture throughout the board.
I can imagine a lot of organizations find out there aren't filtering for DNS appropriately. In other words, you could have the world's most secure lookup servers, right? But if you're allowing them to just put 8.8.8, in, right? So I'm assuming your customers must figure that out pretty quickly. That I was allowing people to put their own DNS servers in for recursive lookups.
Yeah, and we do not recommend that.
Yeah, exactly, right. You want to block all recursive, the lookups and funnel it to.
Yes.
And I like the scale part of it too, because that's if you want to basically use the internet, you have to go through our DNS servers.
Yes.
And those are giving the analyst all those wonderful things that we like to go look in logs and write scripts, but you're providing that for us.
Exactly, providing that for you. And also, companies need to own their resolver, right?
Yes.
You don't want to rely on some third-party, random free stuff out there.
I agree.
Because, that's like an open door for attackers, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you own your resolver, you have the right policies in place, you separate your external DNS from your internal DNS, and you put the security in place so that, there are no loopholes, there's no back doors, right, through which your attackers can get in. The other part is I talked about scale, but because DNS security can block a lot of the bad threats earlier in the cycle, there'll be less load on kind of the perimeter security.
Sure.
They can just focus on more advanced inspection, deep inspection, and do stuff that they're built for, instead of responding to every little malware threat that's in the network.
Right.
So a lot of organizations who've implemented DNS security have seen a tremendous drop in the amount of malicious traffic that's going to their perimeter security.
That's great.
So that's like, they're getting more ROI out of those investments. They're reducing the cost of the threat defense. DNS security is definitely a much more cost-effective approach.
And I love security solutions that do that, right?
Right.
It's easy to implement, as we established.
Absolutely.
It scales, and I get a higher return on investment from my other solutions.
Exactly, right.
It's a winning formula.
Exactly. And the other thing I would say is the data that a DNS, DHCP, and IPAM server collects. So an IP address management solution actually gives a lot of visibility, right? There's a lot of metadata that you can get with an IPAM solution. Things like, let's say there's a compromised device. You want to know more than just the IP address of that device, right? Because you know an IP, you don't know where it is in the network.
Right. Who
So
is
how
using it at
who
that
is
time?
using it?
Yeah.
How are you going to track it down, right? So when you have an IPAM and a DHCP solution coupled with DNS, you know exactly the IP address, of course, but you know also where it is in the network because you have subnet information.
Right.
You have VLAN information. You know who it's assigned to because your IPAM solution can integrate with Microsoft AD.
So they know which user was
You know which
using that
user.
lease, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know the historical IP addresses that that device was using in the last 24 hours or 48 hours or a week. You know other domains that that device has been accessing over the last few days. So you get so much more contextual information about that compromised device than you would ever get with any of the other tools. So when you combine that with the protection that you can get, you're now getting better protection, better visibility, and you can send that data to, let's say, a Carbon Black or some of the other vulnerability scanners. So now they're able to correlate, immediately know, okay, that's the device. It's in my data center in, place X, or it's a production system that's running critical applications, or it's this guy's laptop at his home. So you know exactly where that compromised device is or the compromised host is.
It's everything I've always tried to do with DNS and DHCP, but bundled up into a nice package that I think everyone should use. Like, why wouldn't you have this?
Yeah.
You need these services on your network, so provide them securely.
Exactly. You need it all. You hit the nail on the head, right? So companies need it anyway. Companies need DNS for connectivity. So why not just leverage that for security, then put the 50th, another security tool in your network, right?
Yeah.
Another add-on security tool that's going to add complexity to your architecture, right? This is something that already exists. You already rely on it. You already need it. So just add security to it. It's a no-brainer.
Krupa, how can people learn more and get a trial or a demonstration?
Absolutely. So, you can go to infoblox.com. We have free trials, 30-day, 60-day trials on our Blocks One Threat Defense, which is a security solution from Infoblox, the DNS security offering, so they can get a trial.
So you get your own DNS server you can point out for recursive lookups?
You can do that too.
Yep.
Yep. We have a cloud-based solution. You can just point your DNS to our cloud offering.
Yep.
And immediately get protection. You can also sign up if you want to do an on-site POC.
Yep.
With one of our appliances.
You can bring it in locally as well.
Yep.
Okay.
So the choice is for the user. They could have on-premises deployment. They could do cloud-based. They could do hybrid. We support all types of architectures and all types of licensing as well. So subscription. So a lot of our customers going subscription actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Krupa, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was really good to chat with you.